Hello everyone, nice to see you for this session. So my name's Alex, I'm one of the hosts, so I'll be hopefully chatting with some of you in the comments along with Johnny, and I just wanted to introduce the speakers with a great title this session, I'm Not an Evangelist, Get Me Out of Here. So we've got Anna, who works for Urban Saints, and she's their impact team leader. And we've also got Ben, who works for the Blackburn Diocese, and he is their youth advisor. So I'll hand over to you guys, and I'll see some of you in the comments, I'm sure.
Amazing. Well, welcome. As you probably are used to everybody saying at conferences like this, welcome to this. Obviously, we'd love to do this in person. We planned this as if we were going to get the opportunity to do that. That hasn't happened. But we are going to make the best of this. We even thought we might be on Zoom, so we were going to get to chat and do all that stuff, but that's not the case. But we would love to have this as a bit of a conversation. So please stick your comments, your questions in the chat. So tell us where you're from. I know everyone says that. Just tell us where you're from, why you're at this seminar. Why have you chosen this title? I'm not an evangelist, get me out of here. And also, therefore, what have been your experiences, your frustrations, your successes in this area of evangelism? So yeah, Anna, over to you, mate.
Well, we thought we'd just share a bit of our journey. And so why are we leading the seminar? Because for me, I always wanted to be an evangelist. I always wanted to be someone who sits on the bus, strikes up the conversation and leads that person to Jesus. Same in youth ministry, where young people come to me, I talk to them, they come to know Jesus. But even as a young person, as soon as I became a Christian, that was sort of my heart. That's what I wanted, because, you know, I had found Jesus and wanted to share that. But then soon did a giftings test, and I was so disappointed with the results because I was not an evangelist, but my heart is to share the gospel, but my gifting is to be a shepherd, to look after people and to journey with them. And so that's why I think it's important that we share about evangelism, but from a perspective of someone whose gifting that is not, you know. So my experience isn't that people come to know Jesus right, left and center, but it's the intentional sharing of the gospel with the giftings God has given me. How about you, Ben? What's your background?
I've been doing youth work since I was in my late teens. It was weirdly, my dad was in youth work, and my dad did everything he could to put me off. But it just kept coming back, like that God was calling me to work with young people. And I think for me, it sounds really odd. I've written down here, I'm not an evangelist, but I am. And I think there's something really real in the fact of going, like, I can't say I am with a capital E, but do you know what? I love working with young people. I love seeing them come to know Jesus. And whenever I can, in any way, shape, form, size that I can, whether it's me as the sharer, whether it's me enabling someone or creating the space for others to share the gospel, or even equipping others to share the gospel, like that's what I'm passionate about. And so, like, I was super keen when I was given the opportunity to work with Anna on this. I was like, great, this is where we're at. Like, this may not be something we're super comfortable with. Like, my comfort zone is probably sat somewhere like in a youth group with a kind of a contained group of people, whereas evangelism feels like it's a lot more out there and a lot more dangerous, if you like, at times. And actually, do you know what? I love that, but I really have to push myself. So yeah, that's me.
We would love to hear, like, what's your story? How have you come here? I wonder if some of you are like, I've tried everything in terms of evangelism. I tried to encourage my youth group. I tried to do this myself, but it's not worked. Let us know. For me, it's a little bit like trying to grow an avocado plant. So this is an avocado seed. It's a big one because it's from Kenya. So UK ones would be like half the size. But, you know, I don't know if you ever looked into growing an avocado seed, because avocados get really expensive. But you almost have to know that it takes weeks to submerge them in water, have submerged them for them to grow roots. And I think evangelism, sometimes we expect immediate results, and that isn't happening. And it's frustrating, or it's like one of these I'm a celebrity, get me out of here games where it just feels really hard, really out of our comfort zone, you know. But there is something in stepping out, there's something in persevering. And so we just want to speak you through some of the ideas that we have, and would love to hear your questions, your ideas, and have this really be a conversation about challenges, about successes, about things that we could try again, or maybe things that we have to persevere in. And the amazing thing is, we have the Holy Spirit. You know, we don't have to do this alone, but there is a gift of listening to what God has to say and then doing as he says. And sometimes that is waiting. That means we won't see any fruit. We won't see the avocado roots growing yet, because we're just called to water, or we're just called to sow, but it's not harvest season yet. So there are different seasons for sure, but it's about the invite. And there's another seminar coming, the definition or redefining success of evangelism, which we'd highly recommend, about inviting young people into this, inviting our friends into this, our family into this thing called sharing the gospel and passing this on.
Indeed. And at the end of the day, like first and foremost, when we look at the Bible and we think about evangelism, we are all called to share the good news of Jesus. The Great Commission, which you'll all know it is, Matthew 28, says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded you. And then this bit that Anna has just so rightly said is that Jesus said, and surely I'm with you to the very end of the age. And we are accompanied on this journey of going, God, this isn't my thing. This isn't my comfort zone. This isn't my gifting. It doesn't feel like I'm totally called to this. But as Christians, there is that call on our lives to step out and to do that. So the Great Commission is the Great Commission. It is for everyone. It isn't like the Great Deference or the Great sort of refer it to someone else. The people that do this really well, and it's their comfort zone. And St. Francis of Assisi, this is where the Church of England bit comes out of me, and I start quoting saints, but said this: preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. So I think I want to highlight to us and encourage us that actually one of the big things for us is that we live lives that provoke and invoke a reaction from people that we rub up against. That when our lives come into contact with, and I know that sounds really weird, we shouldn't be rubbing against anybody really in this kind of time. Hugging is out at the moment. Wait until June. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again. But actually, how do we reveal who we are and whose we are? And I think that's our starting point in asking those questions. And it's going to look different for each one of us. We're all unique. We're all different. We all have different ways of doing things. Therefore, our stories are different. And therefore, it's going to look different how we share our faith. But the starting point comes from God's in my life. He's amazing. He's transformed me. How do I reveal that to other people just through how I live my life? That's our starting point. And then I'm now checking my notes. It turns out it's me again. So we'll roll straight on. But it's helpful to start off, therefore, if we think about our first call is as Christians, that we're to engage with the Great Commission, that's our call. And hopefully this is an encouragement and a reminder, not like me going brand new information here, and it's to encourage you in this. But actually, so let's start our journey before we start really thinking about young people and how we do that, or even how we get out there, is how do we get to this place as leaders? How are we identifying ourselves as leaders? How are we doing that? And firstly, and the questions are in your booklet. I've double checked that. So you can write these down, you can answer these in your own time, but essentially, like, who has God made you to be? Now, I'm going to answer these quite generically and quite quickly, but you can take some time to reflect on these. But ultimately, he's made you you. He's made you unique. Therefore, you've got value, you've got worth, and you've got a calling placed on your life. And it may not be to be an evangelist with a capital E, but you have a calling. You are where you are because of what God has placed on your life. And therefore, your purpose is there. And you've got a purpose. And part of that purpose as us as Christians, as we've just said, is to share that good news with other people, whether we're the most comfortable with it or not. And then we've got, like, the question, the other one is, like, have I discovered my giftings? How have I done that? And I have to confess, like, for me, sometimes it's been super clear cut. Like, God has been like, Ben, I want you to do this. I'm going to grow. It's like that kind of moment. Or actually, sometimes it's just that people have dumped me in it or given me a chance to try it out. And equally, therefore, that similar question, like, how have we then grown in those giftings and we realize that's our gifting and that's our calling? And like, I know so many times, like, I've tried and tested stuff. Like, the first time I led worship, I turned around and it was a song I didn't really like and someone else had picked it. And I literally just stood there and went, hey, we're going to sing this song. Let's try and sing it like we mean it. Like we've all tried. That's a terrible intro from a 13-year-old starting out leading worship. But someone let me make that mistake. What I learned was don't really say anything between songs because I put my foot in it. But we all learn and grow and develop in the same way that when I was taking a gap year, I went to China. I spent a bit of time there and I came back and my youth leader was like, Ben, are you going to be involved in this kind of monthly service thing we got? And he went, I want you to be a part of it. And I said, brilliant, that's fantastic. Now I led worship a lot, hence the full story. And he went, Sam's going to lead worship. I want you to speak. And the color drained from me. But you know what? These days I speak more than I lead worship. And God has grown me from that point because someone else pushed me out of my comfort zone because God had spoken to them to grow me and invest in me there. And the whole aim of sharing this with you is not that we want to sort of, it's kind of go, this helps us reflect on, therefore, how do we do this with young people? And ultimately, everything that we've done and sharing our story and our journey is all about modeling authenticity. It's revealing Jesus to our young people. It's something we're being open and honest. We're sitting along and we talk about that a lot. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but like, actually, how is our own faith journey going? Like in times of lockdown, that's been one of the biggest things for my youth group is share what I'm struggling with as much as what I'm doing great in. And equally, it's like, how do we start to look at how we take risks and how do we model that for our young people when this isn't our specialism, this isn't our gifting? How do we start to model taking some risks that feel safe, but how do we also create an environment and the culture where you can take a risk and they know someone's got their back so that they might grow in what they're gifted in. Anything in the chat? Oh, I've not looked at that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to start, sorry. When you're just looking somewhere else.
There are a couple things in the chat here. One is that it's hard going from youth work to evangelism in that context with unchurched young people. And I think for me, that's been a journey of learning to not omit speaking about God. I know that sounds really funny, but you know, when you speak to friends and you're like, what did you do over the weekend? Oh, not so much. Rather than using that opportunity and saying, actually, I went to church and it was amazing, or I had house group, or do you know, this thing happened in my life and it was really hard. And I was angry with God, just being honest about our relationship with God, almost what Ben was saying, how are we doing with God and are we sharing that with young people? And rather than not saying that out of fear, I had to learn to say that anyway and say, God, you know what? That's part of my life with you. That's impacting me. And so the next comment is sometimes we're afraid. And I feel that sometimes I'm like, I don't want to mess this up, God. I don't want to represent you wrongly or say something that then puts the young people further away. But it's like Ben said, it's recognizing, God, you've made me this way. You've put me in touch with that young person. So let me speak off you and let me honor you in whatever way. And sometimes it will come out wrong. And you know what? That's okay. God can redeem things. So it's taking the pressure off us in some ways. Because we can't make that young person follow God. Only Jesus can do that, you know. So all we can do is invite them into this life-changing adventure with God. So why not share that with them? Why not share with them how, when we're struggling, actually we struggle with God and wrestle with God, and that can be really helpful for our young people, even if they don't know God yet and they are still exploring that. But I think sometimes the enemy puts in lies in our heads that we have to have it all sorted, that we have to have all the right answers, that if we get this wrong, that's the last opportunity the young person will get. It won't be. And sometimes we miss opportunities, but God's not surprised. You know, he knows us. So how can we take a deep breath, relax a bit, and then say, hey, this is the God who I follow, and probably in different words. And sometimes we have to rethink how we speak about Jesus so it doesn't sound so far away. You know, actually, God is personal, and I speak to God like I speak to Ben right now, or you right now, you know, so, and that's as simple as it is. Sometimes I just say, God, this really sucks, you know, and I would tell my young people, it's like, actually, this really sucked, and I told God I'm not happy with what he's doing right now, but that's part of sharing who Jesus is. That's part of evangelism, and my family doesn't fully know God yet, and so it's learning to say those things to my family rather than omitting them. Ben, do you have any?
Well, I think it's interesting. There's another comment that's come through about fear. And I think one of the things and it kind of overlaps a little bit, and hopefully The comments come from Jason and around that kind of, I want to do this, but I have a fear of it. And hopefully we'll give you some stuff that just encourages you to take that step, some tools almost that can just go, okay, I can feel safe in that, and almost baby step it through. Not in a kind of, not to kind of speak down to you in any way, but like, as I say, I share from that place that I find this not the most natural thing, and I've had to find things that help me. But I think one of the things that we, and hopefully this is something that you all find, is actually even when I talk to my youth group, my story is really powerful to them. So therefore, when we encounter young people from a non-church background, our story, so how we live and therefore how we navigate it, speaks to them massively. There is something at the moment about sort of that there's a really like that almost generationally we're trying to redefine, or these current generations of Gen Z and sort of younger millennial generation are trying to redefine what truth is. And we know that the truth of Jesus is the ultimate truth, but for them, they're defining that as a personal truth. And so when we present the gospel to them in the first place, they'll sit there and go, yeah, that's all right for you, bro, but that's not necessarily for me. And whereas actually we can share our lives and therefore how God has interacted and God interacts and has transformed our lives, that just subtly changes the narrative that they go, oh, okay. And so the question isn't about, oh, do I accept this? Is this my truth? What it is about, well, that's your truth and it's lived out, and therefore you're experiencing it, and I want to know a bit more. There's that, it goes from being like to a lean in. I want to know more. You're revealing something of who you are, but with that. And so I think that's a real encouragement to you. I think in terms of that fear aspect, hopefully we will cover some of this and hopefully give you some stuff. But I would just say, encourage you. If there's that, and you're trying to do both encourage your young people and you're trying to kind of really push yourself out of your comfort zone, see it as a journey for all of you. Don't see it as me having to be the big leader who's done it all. See it as we're on a journey together. And I would face up and say that myself with my young people, go, hey, I'm not comfortable. This is why we're doing it. So let's go out together. Let's make the mistakes together. I've got your back, but let's just. So yeah, should we look at kind of calling gifting out of young people, and then I think we'll circle around this. So that'd be great.
I think part of what you'll find today is that they interweave. So Ben had spoken about our gifts, how have we found them, because that will help us calling out giftings in other people and young people specifically. So I think the next thing to look at is, how are we calling out the giftings in young people? And if you've tuned into the young people's panel just before lunchtime, I think Alice was the one who's like, give us opportunities. And like what Ben was sharing earlier, I was given an opportunity to speak at 14 in front of 400 other young people in Germany. And that was crazy. I'm like, why did they ask me? You could only mess this up. But I think it helps build faith. And I really had to lean into God, because there's no way I could do this by myself. So, how can we create opportunities for young people to use their giftings and the giftings we see in them? But here's the problem, because we have certain giftings and we find it easy to call out those giftings. But what about other giftings? And I think we have to realize we need other leaders. We can't just do it all ourselves. And though that's hard sometimes, really that is a blessing, because God has created us in and for relationships, and he's made us different. So together we're the body of Christ, right? So we need others to come and journey alongside young people and to bring out those giftings and to call that out. So, but also the other part is, do we know where we're going? So if I would have known that if I wouldn't have known that this avocado takes 6 to 8 weeks to grow any root, I would have given up. Actually, I did give up a couple of times, because I'm like, nothing's happening. However, I persevered once I read about it. And this is my avocado now. I know it doesn't look very impressive, but it has loads of fruits because I kept at it. I kept persevering, because all of a sudden I knew that it takes that long in order for this avocado to grow. And it will take 10 to 12 years until this tiny avocado is bearing any fruit, which is crazy. So I probably should give up.
You're properly in this for the long haul, aren't you, on the avocado?
I am, but
committed to it.
The point is that's what we have to be with young people and sharing the gospel, we might not see anything for a while. We might not see anything in the young people while they are still with us. But maybe after 5-10 years, they'll remember some of the things that God has spoken to them about while we got to lead them. So we don't know, but we can have a vision for them and invite them into new opportunities, invite them to take chances, take risks, give a talk, even if they don't feel they're ready, or even if we don't feel they're ready, just give them a chance to prove themselves. Believe in your young people because they have incredible gifts. And some of their gifts might irritate us because they are so different from us. But praise God for that, because they probably have a gift that we don't have ourselves, so we need it. So that's the next thing. What are the giftings of the young people in your care? And maybe you want to write that down. And if you don't have that gifting, invite someone else alongside to help grow that gift, or maybe help someone else to come along to your youth group and say, what do you see in those young people? And what giftings can you see, and how do you think we should help them grow in it? Ben.
Amazing. Well, there's comments coming in, lots of things, and I realize we are stuff coming back around. Lots of things about feeling just almost worried about what other people will think, and this idea of kind of that almost that fear barrier, which sounds like, I have to confess, like as I say, I'm speaking from a place along with you. So we're going to hopefully. What we're going to talk about in a moment is just finding opportunities. Now we're rattling through our content. So because I'm looking at the time and looking at the timings we put down, and we're both doing really well at not going over our times. So any questions you have, do keep throwing them at us. But finding opportunities. Now we've put some in here, and I'm just going to, and I've got probably a bit more time to expand on some of this than I possibly had before. And I think some of it, for me, is like they're super practical opportunities, and also really practical, really practical kind of ways in which we can grow in confidence as well. There was a question that's just come in about gifts testing, and I think before we move on, do you want to jump in on that? It says, what is the gift testing gift test you're mentioning?
I think the one I did was in Germany like 10 years ago. So I had a look, and that's not available anymore. But you can look at, if you Google online, spiritual gifts for young people. That's how you can find their spiritual gifts. But then there's also just something about practical gifts, I think, which we both need to look at. What is their spiritual gifting, but also practically, what are they good at? Can they do tech stuff? Are they good at social media? Can they speak well? Are they a welcomer, so that whenever they are there, somehow there's just an ease about young people? Are they leading other young people? So it's all these little things that we can learn to pick up on. And again, we probably see what we're best at the easiest. So it's harder to see the gifts that really irritate us. I think it's both, either the ones that we have or the things that irritate us. But there are loads of gifts that probably go unnoticed because it's not quite the giftings we would have ourselves. But yeah, if you look online, there are loads of different ones. I thought we put in a link, but we probably didn't. Sorry about that.
You didn't.
Next time.
Anyway. That's all good. No, that's cool. That's cool. I thought we'd bob back to that because that made sense to link that in there. So opportunities and I guess when I said before about this being a journey together, these are practical tools or kind of resources I have found and seen or organizations that to connect with and look at their material, because they are all about helping us be more there and present in evangelism, to share our faith, to grow in that. The first one is, and Pays are well represented in the group, both in seminar leaders and in terms of kind of people here. So Pays is an organization. They're based up in Burnley, but they have teams across the country that but they offer a gap year, which they're probably most known for. They won't call it a gap year, I don't think. They call it something else. It's like an apprenticeship for a year, basically in how do we do schools work? How do we do ministry? How do we do evangelism? How are we good at doing that? So, and I have to confess, I've had young people go through that, and the growth in them is phenomenal. And those guys are fab. Obviously, this year's been a bit different for them, but they are looking to have another cohort this September, should everything be good and able to do so, is to have them practically back in churches. And so if you've got older young people that you're going, how do I encourage them? So if you've identified a gifting in them of evangelism, how do I encourage that? Or even those that go, I'm kind of teetering on the end of it, but I want to grow in this. That's a really great place. The other thing that pays off it is the Pays Youth Academy, which is therefore all around, like, how do we get connected and grow those giftings and grow those opportunities, create the opportunities, grow the confidence in, like they would do on a gap year, but with our younger young people. Like, how can we do that? And that can connect young people with it, and it connects youth leaders. Now, I don't know if I'm meant to mention this, but Pays also runs something that's called Pays Affiliates, which is for youth leaders. And actually, therefore, and for leaders in different things. So I connected with those guys, and Pete Baker, who's the national director of Pays. I sound like I'm really bigging up Pays. I love what they're about. Genuinely, they're great. But Pete, you get to spend some time with Pete and hear some of the stuff that they do, and to be encouraged by that, and to look at how you grow as a leader, but equally, how do we encourage our young people in the same stuff as this? And just a really practical tool that they've released, and I'll stop talking about Pays in a moment, is Because You're Loved, which is really simple, just a real simple card. But you can attach that to like making hot chocolates and handing that out in the street, or handing out a lollipop or something like that, that just says, they go, why do you like that? Here you go. This explains why we're doing this for you. And it says, because you're loved. And it can start a conversation. And that's a tool that's really simple just to give to someone. The other things, and we've mentioned, these have been mentioned a few times, but obviously the Advance 2020. So you can get yourself connected with one of those groups, and the advanced groups, and therefore grow in that yourself. But equally, the Amplify Academy, which is the youth arm of that, is to connect your young people to that. And sitting alongside that, in some ways, a really practical tool is the Mission Academy live stuff, which is taking a group through, and it's video based. It's very kind of alpha-y in that sense. Take your group through through this process of going, how do we grow in being missional? How do we live this out? But also, how do we share our faith? And so Mission Academy Live, you can sign up for that. You can, I think you sign up as a base, and then you download the material and you can deliver that. And we'll try and stick some of these links, or make sure that this is available to you. There's some other ones and this will get, and if this tickles your fancy, both Healing on the Streets and Jesus at the Door, then go to Anna, not this Anna's, another Anna, Northern Irish Anna's, whose surname completely escapes me right now, but Anna's seminar in the next seminar slot, which is all about supernatural evangelism. And that all comes out of kind of her hometown in many ways. Healing on the Street is about how do we just take the love of God and pray for people and offer that really faithfully on the street. And again, that's quite a big fear factor thing, but that's one thing. Jesus at the Door is another thing. It's a guy called Scott McNamara. He's written it. God gave him a revelation of how do I share my faith really clearly and cleanly with people. He's written a book, and that is attached to that. But Jesus at the Door is just a real simple way of articulating gospel and sharing that with people. Obviously, check out the Scripture Union 95 stuff as well, because that is the heart of their mission at the moment, is like, how do we resource people to reach the 95? And just to give that context, is we reckon that 5% of young people are connected to the church. 95% of young people don't, and they have no contact with the church. And that's how do we reach them? Anna Dawson is her name. Thank you very much to whoever put that in the chat. That's Anna's seminar next. The other two, and these are a little left of field, and I'm going to talk some other little practical things. And I'm sorry, I'm just talking now. But two organizations. One is Festive. Festive do support further education, and Pete Carrington's redefining success in evangelism later, and he's their chief exec. But they're all about equipping our young people on their college campus to share the good news of Jesus, which sounds like it's not necessarily us, but they're really good, and they would train youth workers and help us do that as well. And the other people are Campus Awakening. Campus Awakening are brilliant. They are a mission organization for students at university, and loads of their material, if you get hold of it, actually, it'd be great for us to kind of grow in that, to be challenged by it, but also really practically, like, what does that look like? What does it look like to live it out? But equally, how do we practically share it? I am talking a lot. 2 more really quick things. One is, like, practically grab yourself, or like find out things like, or find simple things. And this is what I've been doing for years, is find the simple things that help our young people to articulate their faith, to articulate their story. So I've just listed a whole bunch of people that will have loads of resources in doing this, but 2 I have found that are brilliant. One is the 4 points, which is going to hit every youth festival going during the summer. Like, you'll see them, 4 points. And that's dead simple, but even if you don't sign up and you don't wear the wristband and you don't buy a t-shirt and you don't do all of that stuff, but actually the basis of how do we share and articulate our faith really clearly is just there. And it's brilliant. And I think we've got to find those things that maybe feel a little bit, excuse me if anyone's here from 4 points, slightly feels cliched and a little bit old and a little bit kind of, well, this has been around for a while and why would I do that? But that's so helpful in saying, how do we just clearly articulate when we have the choice, the opportunity? And if we've practiced that, it doesn't feel so bad. The second one is this, and this is more about sharing your own story that leads on a little bit more, is 6-word testimonies, which says, what's my life in 6 words? Write down 6 words that articulate your life and your life journey. And somewhere in there was a word where Jesus has impacted your life and transformed it. And that's the point where you go, okay, how do I tell that story? And how do I expand that to reveal who Jesus is to me? And how do I start to be able to go, oh, okay, this is really important. And so those are really practical things. And obviously, like, from a youth group setting, if we're trying to do this with young people, is and kind of a growth of that is saying, how do we encourage and put emphasis on the power of testimony within our own stories within these group settings? So there's one thing, us living it out and us sharing our lives, but how do we put that emphasis that we share those things between us as leaders, but also us as with our young people as well? I'm just rabbited. My apologies. Hopefully they are all really practical things or helpful things that will really kind of grow us in those things, and hopefully get us beyond that fear and start to go, oh, I can do this. There's some excitement here. There's some confidence in what I'm doing and where I'm sharing. Sorry. Anna.
No, I think that's really good.
I said I could talk. I've just gone. Apologies.
I think it's always helpful to have those starting points where we can get some skills and then we put them into action. So one challenge, though, is not just to do loads of research and then do nothing with it. Maybe pick 1 thing or 2 things that you want to put into practice. 1 or 2 things where you're like, oh, God really stirred my heart in this. Okay, how can I make this happen now? Or try and invite our young people on this journey, like Ben said, which is, that's all it is taking them on the journey we're on, inviting them in. And so from that, sorry, I'm just trying to read the comments, but maybe Ben can read.
Yeah, I can read. It's something I learned at school. It's good.
So it's about the 4 points.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for us, back to the team aspect, I think it's important that we find mentors. And maybe finding mentors, the starting point is finding a networker, finding someone who knows loads of people. As Ben noticed earlier, we're the only people who've put in contact details in the booklet. So you can contact us and we can tell you maybe who else to contact, because part of our roles is networking, figuring out who else is out there. And like Ben shared, different resources. If you have a young person with a great evangelistic gift, why not send them to Advance? And I think there was some advertisement for Advance in the youth panel, so just we need other people to go alongside young people, to invest in them. And so building that network, building a team is really important, and it's hard. Inviting volunteers is hard, but if you can find someone, or if you know what gift you're looking for, let's say your young person has a gift in public speaking, it's a lot easier to ask someone, hey, I know you do a lot of public speaking. Would you help this young person with their public speaking? I think that's a less daunting ask than, hey, would you come along to youth group? Because people are like, youth group? I don't know if I can do that. But if you invite someone's gifting and foster a young person's gifting, I think that's a lot easier. Yeah, I can help someone with something I know how to do, or if you have a young person who wants to start a business, I have loads of friends who've started businesses. So I'd say, hey, why not connect with that person? And they can talk you through how they've started up the business and become sort of a mentor. Do make sure you follow your safeguarding rules in that, don't just invite anyone. But I guess it's being cautious about safeguarding, but also make sure you do invite other people into this, because if other people are investing in your young people, how amazing. They can see Christian business people, they can see, Christian teachers, Christians in certain roles, so that our young people don't all want to become youth workers, which would be amazing. But, we want to see God's kingdom grow. And I guess the other thing with that is think outside your church, because often, we need to look wider than just our own defined context. And that is okay, because God is a God of a bigger kingdom. He's not just a God of our church. And so there's a beautiful opportunity to work together and work across churches and say, hey, I have a young person with these gifts. Would you be able to help me out? So yeah, and then are you being mentored? Do you have someone who can invest in you, who can challenge you on your giftings, help you grow? Because I think we all still need mentoring. We're not at the end of learning, are we? Life is a whole learning opportunity. And so I've had different mentors along the road, just challenging me on different things, learning to hear God differently. Mentors who can help me in my youth work practice, which has been incredibly helpful, learning to be more reflective. Just doing things differently sometimes helps, where all of a sudden you're like, why would you do it this way? And then the penny drops and you're like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. So that's why being mentored yourself, again, it comes back to who are we, how are we investing in us, so that then we can help young people to grow and develop in the best possible ways. But it so often starts with us. I feel like Ben unmuted, so I'm not sure if he wants to say.
No, I was typing stuff and trying to find something. Someone asked me something, so I was just, rather than you hear me rattling around.
Well, the joys of Zoom, where you're like,
the wonderful world. It wasn't a meeting. If we were live now, you'd just hear me rattling around and probably start a YouTube clip. So yeah, but no, that idea that people, if like it sounds daft, but we know there's other people that sharpen who we are and our calling and like sharpen our faith and challenge us, and like to actively go after that is always a good thing, and to encourage that in our young people. Just to round off what Anna was saying before I rudely unmuted and she got distracted. Sorry.
You didn't disrupt. You didn't. But also, I think if we think about spiritual families, we're trying to reach some young people who don't come from a faith background, so they'll not just need spiritual brothers and sisters, even just a couple of years older as the youth leader, they'll need spiritual parents, spiritual grandparents, because parents will bring different wisdom than grandparents do, and siblings get to speak in your life differently than friends do, so how can we build that spiritual family around young people, so that if a point of crisis comes, they have different people to reach out to, because the relationships will be different. And going back to the being an example, there just is a question, how well does a mentor need to know us? I think you just got to start somewhere. Again, often the fear is that, I need to have this person or that person. And I think for me, the mentoring sessions have always started with getting to know each other a little bit. And at the session, starting off with just sharing a bit of what's going on. And I think for us, it's learning just to be honest with a stranger. That might be the challenge, to say, hey, this is really hard and this is what's happening. Or if you have a mentor who's really skilled at asking questions, they might challenge you on some things without knowing anything about you. Again, we have the Holy Spirit who can sometimes, ask exactly the right questions that we don't want anyone to ask. So I guess as you mentor, that is probably the thing. Listen to what God has to say. What keep stirring. If a young person mentions something or keeps omitting something, again, that's something I had to learn. Sometimes it's the things people don't speak about that shout louder or are really important. Like if someone never speaks about their parent or never speaks about school, there might be a reason for that. But yeah, you just got to start somewhere. And I guess it's saying, God, well, this is what I got, and it might be a wobbly start, but it will get easier and it will get better. And the same as we're inviting people in, and it might not fit, somehow the mentorship might not work, and that's okay as well. And it's, I think, important to be really honest and say, somehow this isn't working out, and not to be mad about it or brokenhearted, but say, thank you for being honest. Let's find someone else who could mentor instead. Ben, do you have any mentoring experience?
I mean, I've done mentoring. One of the things I would say is, and obviously, like, I've got people that are mentors to me. I think the one thing I'd say is, as us as leaders, if we've gone out and sought someone, at the end of the day, you kind of get out what you put in, which sounds real cliche, doesn't it? But actually, if you're not honest and open with someone, you're not going to get back something that's honest and open and a reflection of who you are, and will help you grow in the things that you want to grow in. Mentoring with young people, let's be honest, they don't quite, like, I mean, saying that to them is like red rag to a bull. So I would never start with mentoring a young person, go, what you put into this is what you get out, because they'll automatically just go, fine, I wanted a coffee, I got out of it, I got what I wanted, I'm off. So I would, but it's that thing of, and I think one of the things I've learned over the years, but also, like, I've got there's some really good people that challenge me, just part of our church community, not necessarily people I have low to, but asking good questions is one of the keys to mentoring. And I think when you start to know so in some ways, like, if you want to know how to mentor well, learn to ask questions, not in an interview way. Like that's really hard, but it's how do you answer an open question and how do you follow that up? And I think that's something that's really helpful. And I've found that with mentoring, particularly for young people, that I don't know how to break down that barrier. It feels like they're kind of gone, my parents told me to be here, or like, you said something about this and I thought it might be fun, but like all I really wanted was a hot chocolate and somewhere warm to sit for a bit. That's all good, but actually write down some questions. What are the things that actually will help unlock them, and find kind of what kind of opens them up? And it might take a few weeks and it might take a bit of time, but actually some of that is it's the same with everything. I'm a great believer that the best moments of spontaneity and allowing God to move really freely within stuff is when we've planned, because we know what we're doing, and actually therefore we can let that space happen. And I think it's the same with mentoring. It's saying, okay, this can go anywhere, but what are the things I'm going to start off with if this doesn't go as smoothly? And I think that's super practical, but it's really helpful in doing that. And I think knowing that young people will probably have some hesitancy is probably a thing that we need to know as well within mentoring. But yeah, those
so
are
would we. It's like sometimes
totally.
that hesitancy, and fear is normal, worry or anxiety or feeling out of our depth, that's normal. And we're not trying to argue away those feelings. They will be there as we step out, as we share who Jesus is through mentoring, through calling out gifts, through trying to develop us as people. There will be challenges. There will be things that will make us feel highly uncomfortable, and that is normal. The question just is, will we remain in that place, or will we try and move out of that? Well, not out of that, but in that still. Which is amazing. And so I guess coming back to, are we an example? Like, it's looking at our lives as well. If we're asking young people to share the gospel and share with their pals, or share with their family, are we doing that? Because it's easy to ask, but if I've looked at a lot of my lives, I only have one life, just to clarify, but a lot of my years, right? I know, I'm living my second life right now, but every night has been filled with an activity, but I've not factored in any time or any activities where I can meet non-Christians. And that sounds super silly, so I then started a couple of years ago. I tried the gym, didn't really work for me. I'm like, I never speak to people in the gym. But maybe you go to the gym and you actually know people there, try and get to know them. Then I tried rock dancing, which I really loved. And that's a great way, like dancing, and you get to dance with other people each time. But unfortunately, now it's a night I can't do. So what are the things that you're interested in and passionate about, that you can do in your own life so that you can get to know non-Christians, so that you can learn to share your faith with someone who doesn't already know Jesus? Because if we fill our lives with church activities all week and then serve at youth and this and that, it's probably hard to learn to share the gospel, but then we're expecting that of young people. So I think it's important that we evaluate our lives and then look at, okay, how can I change maybe some of my things, so that I can learn to share the gospel with someone else. And it's not the easiest thing. I probably haven't found the thing yet, and then lockdown happened and the pandemic, so it's probably a lot harder. But it's still, I want to keep on trying until I find different avenues of meeting new people and then sharing my faith. And my family, again, as I said, are on a journey, but it's learning to vocalize things with them, and rather than omitting things about God or things that could help, mentioning God in it. And that's, for me, is a learning journey. But I think we just have to look at us, and we're examples. So how can we ask something of young people if we're not challenging ourselves? I guess is my own challenge in that.
There's loads of questions flying in. Do we know any mentoring resources? I have to confess, I've kind of dived into mentoring and just sort of gone with the flow of it, from a sort of, I think I've got the experience to do this sort of approach. There was a question about...
Sorry, there's an app called Walk With Me, which has been developed by different charities. So that'd be a great one to look up in terms of mentoring. And then there are a couple, again, if you Google mentoring questions, some of them are accountability questions. Some of them might be a little bit deep to start off with. You're like, oh, I'm not sure I would ask this to anyone, never mind share about it. But there are different resources out there already. Sorry, Ben.
Nice. No, it's all good. Who would be in a good position to mentor children and family work, a children and family worker? I think it sounds really daft. Sometimes I think mentoring with peers is a really good thing. People that are doing a similar thing in a different place, that's really good. Working with the Church of England, and I don't know what background or what sort of, if you're connected to a denomination, I think sometimes there are Darton advisors. So for the Church of England, Darton advisors. The Methodist Church has people higher up that kind of have advisory roles. I think you look for organisations that you respect as well, and sometimes they won't have that. Someone that can go, oh, I've got the time for this. So like Anna, if you're local to Anna and you go, actually Urban Saints, I love what they're up to. You could connect with someone that you think from an organisation, they'd be great. And I'd love to get some time with them. And sometimes mentoring, and this is the thing, sometimes mentoring's only like with certain people is for a period of time. So actually like you get some like real, so you can get some real depth with someone on a certain thing. And that's fine. And you get particular input. Like I do that. I look for that around leadership and management stuff, because that's something I want to grow in. But sometimes it's like, actually someone's only got a certain amount of time and you go, okay, that's great. Like, let's have a season where this is something we go after together. And like, this is a mentoring relationship, but that might end. The thing I would emphasize, because I've just said, if you're in the Church of England, look for your advisors. Like, we work ecumenically. Like, I will say that outright. Like, we'll talk to most people within reason. Jokes, but we'll talk to anybody, and we'd love to get alongside you in that. So like, chances are, if you know what your diocese is, then connect with that. Try and find the diocesan website and look at who your children's advisor or your youth advisor is.
There was also Live Life 123, which awesome. That is just looking at who are we mentoring, making sure that we invest in someone, because as we disciple, as we mentor, we will grow. Who are our peers? That's the two. Who are the people that walk alongside us that can have a similar experience, and then who's mentoring us. So it's just the idea of having different people who can speak into life differently. But it's a really good book to work through. Also, if you've a team, if you happen to have a team of youth workers or children's workers, or just a team within your church, to look at that together and say, who can be the mentor? But yeah, again, our contact details are in the booklet. So if you want to email us and we can just ask around, we do have connections across the UK and Ireland, I would say. So we can ask around. I can't promise you that someone will say yes, but we can definitely try.
Cool. This is a biggie. There's a question in, and it's been brought up for me again. So Johnny's prodding in the background, which is, what are the ways of bringing the gospel into conversation with non-believers? My gut says, and this is me, and I'm possibly being a wimp about this, but is this: if you are having a conversation with them that is general, and you talk, naturally your faith comes up because they'll ask what you did this weekend, or you are sharing something that you're passionate about, or they ask what you do for a living, or all that stuff. Like I genuinely leave it for nature, which sounds really, really kind of slightly hippie. But actually it's more about, like, if it naturally comes up, it naturally comes up. And I think I just have those, I've very much gone, okay, if this comes up in conversation, I get asked, I will share it, rather than go, I'm going to try and shoehorn this into every conversation I have with you. And for some people, like, it will take years, and at some point they'll just go, all right, a few weeks back, you talked about this. Could you just tell me about this? And I think that the pressure, we need to take a bit of pressure off ourselves when it comes to evangelism, that we are not trying, like, we can actively go out and try and convert the world, but chances are we'll get a rep for that, and it won't be good for the church. It won't be good for Jesus. But what it actually is going, actually, how are we friends? How do we do life alongside people? How do we connect with people? And how do we reveal our faith that prompts questions? And I think that's the thing. And I think that's where I've very much gone, me as a non-evangelist, how do I go out and do that? And actually one of the, and to link to this, actually the presence, Evangelism as Presence seminar that kind of got curtailed by technical issues, that's going to go up online later. So you could connect to that and have a look at that, because that's very much about this. How do we start from there? So there's all of that kind of connected in. I think that for me is genuinely it. Like I find it really hard personally to go like, hey, Jesus, in every conversation, but he comes up naturally. In the same way I talk about my family, he naturally comes up in conversation as I'm chatting with people. So
a good book is Questioning Evangelism by Randy Newman, which is an American book, so culturally slightly different. However, it's challenged me on how am I asking questions. And what Ben was saying, I'd agree with it. It should happen naturally. But also that means, like for me, and when people ask me what I do, rather than saying, oh, I set up youth groups, I work for a charity, I say, oh, I work for a Christian charity, and that sounds like something minor, but I just want to drop in things so that they know I'm Christian, I follow God. It's like, and like I said earlier, it's trying not to omit the things that I did that are related to God, but trying to actually say them. And that sounds really easy to some, but has been a challenge to me. And that's why I just had to reflect on my own life and what I'm omitting or not saying to people out of fear or worry, or because I don't want to push them too far, rather than just making it sound normal. Yeah, I go to church on Sundays. I've house group. That's the group from church where we just get together and talk about life, and talk about what we've heard on Sunday. So it's learning to make those things sound normal rather than really awkward, which I just had to learn. And the same with sharing our own faith, our own story. Like Ben said, how can we make that seem normal rather than awkward or hard, where we might have to sit down and think through, okay, what has God done in my life? What has changed since I've become a Christian? And probably when evangelism isn't your gifting, you have to think about it a bit longer and you have to practice a little bit more. And that might sound silly, but really will help you as you then have conversations to share much more naturally what God is doing in your life and has done in your life and continues to do. And how many of us have prayed for financial provision of some sort, or for God to do a miracle? And like, I sold a house the first lockdown day, And so, you know, the real estate agent's like, this is a miracle. Now, he is definitely not a Christian, but I'm like, yes, it is a miracle, you know, and where you like praise God. And you could even write that in there where you actually mean it, you know, rather than saying, yeah, that was great. So, you know, giving praise for things that have happened in our life where you're like, I don't know how this happened, but I prayed and it happened. You know, I don't think people will say much about it. And if they're not interested, they'll brush over it. But if they are interested, they'll come back to it. And so it's giving people snippets that they can hold on to if they want to. And if they don't, that's fine. You just continue having the conversation and investing in them.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few questions flying in. I'm really conscious that we will get our wrist slapped by our great host, Bob Goody, if we overrun this. So I'm really conscious we got 5 minutes. One thing that someone's just written is, where do we start when interacting with people who the Christian narrative is, for whom the Christian narrative is alien? I think the thing I would say is that we and myself and a few other people, possibly Anna and I have had the same conversation, but we live in a time where we have a generation that, unlike any other generation, where they have little preconceived idea of who Jesus is. When asked who Jesus is, they'll put him alongside Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi. And like, they'll go, great people, but we know that Jesus is the savior of the world. And so I think when it comes down to it, the Christian narrative that we're to engage with is exactly what we've been saying, which is saying, how do we live this out? That they say, what is different about your life compared to mine? And that gives you an opportunity to start right from scratch. And I actually think that is an opportunity when for someone that isn't their natural go-to, rather than saying, because actually, like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm 36. That doesn't make me massively old, but I find that people come with a preconceived idea of what church is and who Jesus is. And therefore their hang up is often about church or is often about rules. But if someone's got no preconceived idea, actually that's almost simpler to be able to go, Jesus will transform your life. This is why. So I think I would say that's actually, I personally see that as a massive opportunity than sometimes where we've been previously. So I'd encourage you, go, that's an encouragement, like, start doing some of these things, checking them out. I think the 6 words video, an example of that, has been posted. I would just say that's like the starting point. And with youth groups and young people, and with myself, I'd gone, where is the moment that God speaks into this, and how do I expand that story and share it and emphasize, like, where is God in the midst of that? I think that's the huge bit there.
And then
cool.
Just try and keep language simple.
Yeah.
You know, that's what the Message version attempts to do, trying to translate the Christian narrative into language that makes sense to people today, and just ask them, again, asking questions like, does this make sense to you, whatever I'm saying? Because sometimes we're so used to church language that we don't recognize it as being alien to someone else. But yeah, sorry, time has come to a close. So
all right. Should we I'm just gonna, do you want to pray? Let me finish with just 2 things really quickly, just to really remind you. And is this that all of this is about us just living this out. So this is us just being the example of who God has called us to be. And that sounds like a really big thing sometimes when we say it like that, but actually it's just us going, where's God in my life? How do I live it out? And how do I reveal him in the world? And the other one is it's being super intentional about where we are and saying, how do we as leaders, if this isn't our comfort zone, if this isn't our thing, how do we push ourselves? Baby steps. Don't go jumping in. Don't go out and go, I've got to do detached youth work, or I've got to do healing on the streets, or I'm going to go out and do a treasure hunt. Don't go reading anything from Bethel right now, because that's going to scare you after death. Like, just baby steps. What's the next step? Me and my youth group. And hopefully you'll just grow in confidence and use some of those tools just to go, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to stand in front of the mirror and do it. Sorry, we need to pray. I'm sorry.
Father, would you say or point out one thing that we can do today? Would you speak to us right now? And then would you help us to do something about it? God, thank you that you're faithful, that you're amazing, that you're good. And ultimately, Lord, that growth is in your hands. We can't make anyone come to follow you, but thank you for your invitation to join into your kingdom work, God. Thank you that we get to share the gospel and the good news of who you are. And so thank you for everyone who joined in today. And we just pray, God, that you would continue speaking throughout this weekend. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.